Yeah, so here goes then. I just thought I'd sort of make an introductory video this afternoon. Talk about some of the things that I'll be covering perhaps in the future. But today is just a short video about, I think it's really about how we can often look to others for some sort of support and reassurance that that we never really grow out of. It's something that happens obviously in childhood. You know, when we look to our mother to provide us with sustenance and emotional support, and to teach us how to deal with with life really. And some of us are lucky enough to have a father as well to help the mother. In my case, I didn't have a father. Well, not for very long. My dad died when I was 8 months old. It's something my mother never really recovered from, I don't think. I think she mourned him till the day she died. Anyway, having said that, she was a particularly wonderful mother. And she died in my arms when I was 40 years old. Something I'll never forget, but it was a privilege. And anyway, so yeah, looking to others for support and reassurance. It's something I always did throughout my life. You know, I left school when I was 16. I couldn't stand it. I hated school. I was a difficult pupil, I think. But I did have some wonderful teachers who sort of recognised that I did have an ability to learn and to regurgitate and to debate. Often spent hours and hours and hours in a school day outside in the I was going to say corridor. We didn't really have corridors. It was like an open cloister, the school I went to, sort of. And often I wouldn't even make it into the classroom. I was told to stay outside, don't come in, because I would often challenge everything or show just total disinterest in whatever they were saying, which is not great for a teacher's experience. I guess, but there you are. And from there I became an engineering apprentice. I did that for how long did I do that for? About 4 or 5 months, and I loathed it. Absolutely loathed it. They give you one piece of metal that you sort of cut up and grind down and whatever. Not given sufficient tools to actually execute the entire jobs, which entail taking one tool back to get another that you needed. And I would often lose the thread of where I was on, you know, how far I'd got with the job. And I know they don't like swearing on YouTube, but very often I would just say, "Oh, F it," and cock it up and, you know, be expected to start again. So that didn't last very long. But one of the reasons I left the engineering course, it was just like being at school. You know, I was 16, went from, most of the time was spent at college. In fact, all the time was spent at college. And I had a little moped thing. I used to go from, it was about 20 miles from my home to the college, and most of the boys there had mopeds or motorbikes, and One of the horrible things was, well, not horrible. Well, what happened was, two of my very best friends there were both killed on their motorbikes on the way to college, and no, we weren't given any sort of emotional help with that. You know, the lecturer just said, "Oh, you know, I have to tell you, all boys, because we're all boys. There were no girls in those days. This was 1974 in England, in the UK, and he just said, "Oh, got some bad news." I forget his name now. It's a long time ago. It's 50 odd years ago. 50 years ago now. He's killed on his motorbike. And any of you want to go to his funeral, we'll let you know when it is. Back to work. Back to cutting up your bits of metal. I was devastated. He's my best friend there. No, incredible, really. But and then another one was killed about 3 months later, and I now know I was sort of traumatized by this, and I thought I'm going to get out of here. And another one of the boys there was, he said, "Oh, I'm poxed off with this. I'm going to go and join the Navy. I'm going to go down to Plymouth on the train the day after tomorrow to the Naval Careers Office, and I'm going to join the Navy." And I said, "Oh, that sounds great." I said, "What are you going to do?" He said, "Oh, I can't remember what he said." Anyway, I went home and looked it up. I always wanted to be a helicopter pilot, and all you needed was 6 O levels or 5 O levels, all of which I had. So I thought, I'd like to come with you. Anyway, I went down to the Royal Naval Careers Office with my friend. He was called Rob. He was such a nice guy, really talented rugby player. Anyway, we went in and they signed him up, and I was taught. They said, "Oh no, you can't be a helicopter pilot until you're 17." And I was only 16 at the time. This was in the sort of November or December of 1974. So I wouldn't be 17 until 6 months' time, you know. God, Anyway, this Royal Marines sergeant was there, a colour sergeant, you know, recruit. He said, "Well, you can join the Royal Marines at 16 and you can become a helicopter pilot." So I said, "Oh, that sounds great." He said, "Yeah, you'll get a green beret and you'll be a commando." I knew some Royal Marines. A good family friend's daughter had married a Royal Marine called Martin. He was a great guy. You know, he's come in with his, I don't know, rucksack or whatever you call it. He was a great guy. I thought, you know. So, well, cut a long story short, ended up in the Royal Marines, which again was traumatic. You know, at 16, away from home. Oh my, you know, taught to kill people. And I'll talk a bit more about that perhaps some other time, but I did end up coming out of the Royal Marines, which again was devastating. Anyway, but when I was in the Royal Marines, I came across some absolutely fantastic people. The instructors, they were all very accomplished Royal Marines. And one in particular was called Sergeant Osborne. He was a big influence on my life, really, I now realise. And I did look to him for some sort of support and, what's the word? Reassurance that I was doing everything right. And, you know, I was a very good young Royal Marine. I was a junior Marine. They were, in those days, they've been trained to be the sort of the leaders of the Marine Corps in the future. And yeah, Sergeant Osborne was amazing, absolutely incredible. He was the epitome of a real soldier, I guess, and he'd been serving in Borneo. Borneo was a British protectorate at the time when his commando unit was sent to Borneo to put down an uprising. There were some rebels. They were actually sort of indigenous people who lived in the jungles of Borneo, and they suffered great hardships at the hands of the British, and they'd had enough, and they had this uprising, and they killed a lot of people out there. In fact, some said to me they were headhunters, cut the enemies' heads off and shrink them and wear them around their belt or hang them up in their huts or whatever they had, houses. And Sergeant Osborne said, "Yeah, it was brilliant. It was wonderful because we actually got to kill some people." And I thought, "Oh my God, So he told us, that they were going through they were tracking this group of rebels through the jungle. They'd killed quite a few people in a local town. The Royal Marines were sent to get them, as it were. By the time they got there, it was all these people were dead, basically. And they tracked them. They had local trackers, to track them through the jungle. And it took them 2 days to find this group of rebels who, they weren't particularly well trained. They hadn't put any sentries out, and they were all swimming in the river, having a lovely time. And Sergeant Osborne said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, we set up a crossfire. We had 2 Bren guns, which are machine guns, and they all had rifles, obviously. We set up a crossfire, which is there. So down the river is the rebels, set up a crossfire. And, well, I can't use the language on YouTube, but he basically said, we just shot the Seas, all of them. We shot the lot of them. We killed them all. There were no survivors." He said the river was just red, and I was shocked. It's absolutely shocked. This guy's he's like my sort of hero, if you like. He was our weapons instructor, so he teaches us how to shoot rifles and what they call GPMGs, which was a heavy machine gun. And I was a very good shot, and he was a very good instructor. Anyway, I think it never occurred to me until that day he told that story that we're expected to kill people. I'd gone there to be a helicopter pilot. I know helicopter pilots kill people now, but I just thought it'd be nice to fly around in a helicopter. I'm a helicopter pilot. That's what I thought. Didn't think any of this stuff involved killing people. Anyway, I still didn't really change my opinion of Sergeant Osborne that much. I still thought he was a great guy. He was amazing. I had another instructor called Chunky Chambers. Chambers was his surname. He was a bit of a portly man, but he was our drill instructor. He was as hard as nails. And Sergeant Osborne, I don't know if he was just called Sergeant Osborne. He didn't have a nickname, I don't think. And Chunky Chambers, they were great mates. They were always sort of, out drinking beer and whatever. And they were. Anyway, I was going to find my photograph and show you when I passed out as a junior Marine. Anyway, that's another story. So looking to people for support and reassurance. Yeah, you're okay. Am I okay? Yeah, yeah. Am I doing things right? Yeah, you're fine. You've been doing more than right. And I think that's sort of continued throughout my career, really, is I was always looking to, I suppose, father figures, because I didn't have a father, and I didn't really have anybody that really stood in for my dad. My mum was a wonderful parent. She was fabulous. Everybody liked my mum. Everybody loved my mum. She was, I don't. She didn't take any. She would tell you where to get off. She'd put boundaries in. Don't worry about that. But she was just the most wonderful, loving, very funny, um, and enthusiastic, and yeah. But I didn't have a dad, so I didn't have any. So my next job after the Royal Marines, I got a job as a trainee quantity surveyor, and I worked, which was basically working on building sites, and we worked on a big motorway project, the company I worked for. And the man I worked for was called Dallas. And Dallas was again, I just really looked up to him. He was fearless. He was clever. He was great at making money. We used to employ quite a few men. There's no women. Called mastic asphalters, which basically is like a bitumen-filled bitumen mixture that you can put on flat roofs, and we had to waterproof all these concrete bridge decks. Um, and yeah, it was millions and millions of pounds worth of business, and I soon became his right hand man, and he got me a company car, and he smoked cigars, and he used to give me cigars, and I used to think that was wonderful. So he used to drive his lovely car, his lovely company car, and smoke his cigars, and he would tell me all these wonderful stories, and it was before mobile phones or whatever, and he just used to say, "This is great, isn't it? We're earning money and we're having a lovely time," and we did. And we used to go and go see the blokes, measure up what work they'd done, so we could send the client an invoice, and yeah, he was great, and he was fearless. That's what a bit like Sergeant Osborne, really. Sergeant Osborne was fearless, and so was Dallas. He wasn't frightened of anybody or anything. It was amazing. I remember once we were at a site meeting, where all the subcontractors turn up. You get the architect there and the main contractor, and the clerk of the works, represents and sometimes you got the client's representative there, all sorts of people, and all the subcontractors, people do the roofs, people who did the scaffolding, people who put the windows in, and the heating, and the walls, and electricity, plumbing, all that sort of heating. And we were all there. And in those days, it was quite new to put flat roofs on really big buildings. And this building, we had the contract to put the roof on. Oh no, it wasn't. It was a supermarket. I beg your pardon. It was a supermarket, and because of the size of the roof, it needed what was called an expansion joint, which is a sort of a hard rubber thing and with a gap. So as it heats up, it can move that way. Uh, Sorry, so it can expand and contract and expand. If you don't, the whole thing just rucks up. It then fractures, and all the rainwater can get in, which defeats the object of the exercise of a waterproof roof. And we'd written to the architect and the main contractor quite a few times, saying, "Look, this roof it needs 2 expansion joints in it, and you haven't put them on the drawings." And we didn't quote for it either, because we didn't know he was going to get the job. And extras are extras, it always happens in the construction industry, or it did in those days. So it got round to us, they'd done like I don't know, people put the windows in, and then it's yeah, RM Douglas, that's the company we work for. who's here from Aaron Douglas? Oh, we've got here Dallas Lees. Who? Yeah, this is the main contractor running it. You know, so they were from it. Hello, Dallas. Yeah. Hello, Bob, or whatever his name was. Can we have your report then, Dallas? He said, yeah. You know, we're ready. You know, tell us when to start, and we've got all the materials on order. You know, it's we just need to know when to start. But before we can start, I have to tell you, you've not answered our letters, or the architect hasn't answered our letters about the expansion joints. You know, this roof it requires 2 expansion joints, and we need to know which one, because there's several types, which one is going to be specified so we can cost it and order it. And you know, you need to obviously put the joint in the concrete slab as well. It's not, or you need to cut. So the main contractor said, yeah, I turned to the architects, we've written to you about this so many times. You know, you keep saying you're going to get round to it. What's happened? And the architect said he doesn't need expansion joints. That's why we've not replied. So Dallas said, what do you mean it doesn't need expansion joints? Of course it needs expansion joints. You know, it's ask the structural engineers. So the structural engineer said, oh, we've looked at it. We don't think it requires expansion joints. So Dallas said, that's okay. We'll put the roof in. He said, but when the fucking thing leaks, probably when it leaks, he said, you know, it's going to cost a lot of money for us to come back and for you to put the expansion joints in, for us to make it good and everything. And the architect said, Mr. Lees, will you stop telling us how to do our job? And Dallas said, well, that's all right. He said, tell you what, find somebody else to put your roof on, because we ain't doing it. He said, you know, we've got lots of work. We're making quite a lot of money at the moment. I don't want to get involved in doing your roof wrong. And the architect said, well, I don't know. So Dallas said to his mate, the main contractor, Bob, look, we're out of it. Find somebody else to put your roof on. And with that, everybody, all the subcontractors, representatives, clapped Dallas. And he was a very popular man. Everybody loved that. You know, his enemies. Everybody's got their enemies. But most people liked Dallas because he was so straight. He was so authentic. And he was a nice guy. And everyone, yeah, well done, Dallas. You told them. You know, and I think some of the other subjects, tell you what, if Dallas don't want to put your roof on, we don't want to put your windows in or whatever. And it nearly caused a riot. You know, he's so funny. But he was like a father figure for me for that. I learned so much from him, particularly how to make money, how to handle some of these mastic asphalters, they're old enough to be my grandfather, and I was technically their boss. But what he used to say is, don't ever tell these guys how to do anything. Just tell them what you want them or what needs to be done, and how long will it take or whatever. Don't ever make the mistake of telling some of these. You know, they've been doing it since they were 14, and he never gave me duff advice. He was great, wonderful man. So I so often ask Dallas about, you know, quite personal things really. What do you think I don't know, Dad, can I ask you? He said, yeah, go on. He said, oh, often he would say, do you know what? I could tell you what I think, but actually, you're quite capable of working this out for yourself, Graham. You know, just don't try and think about these things too much. Just listen to your heart. What's your heart telling you? Or your intuition? He said, you're a very intuitive person, Graham. That's why I employed you. He's a nice guy. One of the best bits of advice he ever gave me was, he said, look, Graham, you always got an opinion. Don't always have an opinion. Don't just keep it to yourself. It doesn't matter unless you're asked. Then you can give it. But if you're not asked, just keep it to yourself, and then get home, go up the pub, take your girlfriend out, go out on your motorbike, whatever you want to do. Don't get tied up in that sort of thing. He said, and for goodness sake, one piece of advice I'm going to give you. He said, very often you're going to be in a room and something will come up. Now, for goodness sake, when it comes up, think about what you're going to say, if you're going to say anything at all. Because very often in life, in a room, there's quite a few people who think you're a bit of a C, an idiot. And that may or not be right. But for goodness sake, don't stand up and say something that will dispel all doubts. Oh, he's a good guy. Anyway, this has gone on for long enough now. Yeah, what I do, I had a great career. Went for the construction industry. What did I do after that? Flood insurance, which I didn't really like. Then what did I do after that? I ran a wine bar, which was great fun when wine bars first come in the UK. That was hilarious. I loved doing that. Then I went to work for a radio station, commercial radio station, because we'd done some ads when we had the wine bar. And then when I left the wine bar, they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm not doing." "Oh, we need an account manager. Would you like to come and work for us? Come talk to us about." So I went and worked for them. And from commercial radio, I went to commercial television, to ITV, to the local ITV contractor, which in those days was TSW, Television Southwest, which it was the best company, the best job, the best people. It was just best customers. It was just amazing. I loved working there. And I was lucky enough to work my way up through ITV as it all changed. And I became regional sales director. And I used to love that too. But when I was regional sales director, it was quite a privileged job, really. I used to work for this, what they call a sales house. So we sold the commercial airtime, generated the income for quite a few ITV contractors that either our parent company owned or they were just client companies. But in all those companies, I would deal with the chairman and the chief executive and the finance director and head of operations and some of the people in head office, because I used to work in all the studios. I had an office in all the studios with managers and teams working for me in all the studios. The people in head office didn't really know the chairman or the chief executive or the finance director of these broadcasters, but I did, because I used, a pound you can raise in their local market is a pound for them, that nobody else can have. So I was very successful in getting them lots of new pounds, and some of them became again my mentors. One in particular, he was the chairman of HTV, which was the contractor for the west of England and Wales. He's an amazing man called Louis Sherwood. Louis ran everything. He was chairman of so many things, and he was just an amazing guy. I really liked Louis, and he liked me. And when I first got there, it was awful. They were in financial clag. He'd been brought in by HTV's largest shareholder, which in those days was Barclays Bank, to turn it round, really. And I was part of that turnaround. I was put in there by the chairman, chief executive of the sales house. The first thing I said to Louis was, he said, "Oh, I can't understand. Why would you want this job?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, it's a bit of a poison chalice, really, isn't it?" So I said, "Is it?" I said, "Well, you took the job. Wasn't it a poison chalice?" And he said, "Do you know what? I hadn't thought of that." and we got on like a house on fire. I said, look, the way I see it, Lou, is if you're going to buy a pub, you wouldn't buy one with a big turnover. You'd buy one that used to have a big turnover, and now it's got a small turnover, because it's got the ability to have a big turnover again. And yeah, he was a great guy. Often used to say, "Oh, can you come up and see me?" Because it's quite complicated how ITV contractors actually got their revenue. It was all sort of smoke and mirrors, and deals within deals within deals, that when some deals were delivered and very few were. Everything was done sort of by word of mouth before the sales houses, and then we got everybody contracted and sort of nailed them down a bit. So, but basically, advertising agencies would move money around the ITV network to manipulate it so they could get the cheapest price overall, as it were. Anyway, so he'd often call me. He said, "Look, can you explain?" I said, "Well, the thing about ITV is it's done on share of revenue, share of broadcast, and this year it's our turn to be the losers, because someone's gain is someone else's loss in any business, usually, but particularly in ITV. If someone's got a high share, that means it had to come from someone else." Which in that particular year, I said, "You've had 3 years of having the muddy end of the stick, shall we say. So what we've got to do is turn things around. So you sort of move up towards the middle of the stick. We might get towards the top of the stick one day. But anyway, one way we can move you towards the middle of the stick is to generate lots of regional revenue that you used to take and you don't take anymore." And he said, "Well, how are we going to do that?" I said, "Well, the thing is, Louis, is all the chairmen and all the chief executives of most of these companies, don't you?" And I read him a list. He said, yeah. So I said, "Well, what we're going to do is you're going to be my chief account manager, new business manager." He said, "Well," I said, "Well, what we'll do is we'll..." Anyway, I'll tell you what we did another day, but it was very successful, and Louis loved it, and he was a lovely guy. Sadly, he's dead now. As are most of my mentors, because I'm going to be 65 in a couple of months. I can't believe it. But there you are. And then what I'm going to talk about is what I do now is I do sort of consultancies for people. There are quite a few people. Some of them are still alive. My mentors aren't, but people who used to work for them. Because a fresh pair of eyes on any operation, in understanding the business dynamics, and it's quite extraordinary. You can go into a business, and some of us, even senior people, they know their part of the business, but they don't appreciate other people's part of the business and how it all adds into the total dynamic of a business. It's always interesting. It's not about going on a witch hunt, but just small insights can have quite big benefits, because I used to, when we was in ITV, we used to get all these management consultants coming in. They were funny, but highly paid people. But I always thought they were quite amusing, because they used to come in and try and instead they would talk a lot and not listen very often, And I remember once I had one. I forget the name of them. I think they were McKinsey's, the big management consultants brought in to make us more efficient and make more money, which is quite. And didn't have a clue about the media business. And my one is assigned to me. He was without being unkind, he did have a big ego, and I thought he was really rather silly. He sort of had he told me he had a degree in an MBA, Masters of Business Administration. I don't know, from Sheffield or University or something. I don't know. Well, I never really. Anyway, he said, "Oh, we need to look at this. We need to look at this. We need to look at that." And I said, "Oh, okay." That was the brief. So he said, "Well, if you could, just fill in the boxes and whatever for the next." And he said, "I'll ring you next week or whatever." So I said, "Okay." Yeah. I had mobile phones in those days. I was never in the office very much. I was always out around the offices, and I remember he'd always announce where he was. And he said, "Oh, Graham is," I forget his name now. Not good with names. Who is? I'm in Zurich. Just giving you a ring. Hang on, just wonder how things are going. Oh, he'd say, "Oh, I'm in Melbourne. And so it mattered a jot where he was on the world's surface. He was just on the end of a telephone. It's funny. Anyway, he just disappeared one day. I said, "Oh, what's happened to him?" I said, "Oh, gone." So I said, "We were going to get assigned to me now." "Oh, you've done all that McKinsey's need you to do." So there you are. He was a nice guy, don't get me wrong, but he was just superfluous. It was just totally useless what they were getting us to look at. A bit like sort of moving the deck chairs around on the Titanic, as they say. But that's what I do. Usually it's about it's all businesses are about process and people, and very often people spend a lot of time doing things they don't like doing, and sometimes don't even need to do them. But that's a different, it's the old thing. Oh, we've always done it this way because no one's ever looked at it from the outside. So that's what I do. So, if you're interested in just talking about this, very happy for you to send me an email or a message on here, and I'll get back to you. But I will be talking in the future about how things changed for me dramatically in my life. And I sort of went on this quest of finding support and reassurance in the biggest way I've ever done in my entire life. And it entailed me going sort of a third way around the world to Thailand to find myself, and ended up very often with a Buddhist abbot who was across the road in a temple from where I was living in this tiny village in the north of Thailand, because it was cheap to live there and I could do yoga and just do nothing for very little money, having spent quite a lot of money in places in the UK, but weren't that much of a help really, and very expensive, so I went out there. And I talked about that. And then I found, after 8 years of searching for someone, I used to I read the books by Eckhart Tolle, or Tolle, I don't know what. It's funny, isn't it? When no one knows how to pronounce his surname. I think it's Eckhart Tolle. He's an English man of German extraction. I think he was born in Germany and then they moved to England. He wrote 2 books, one called The Power of Now, and the other one's called A New World. He talks about sort of mindfulness and how he sat around on park benches for 11 years trying to work it all out. until one day there's sort of epiphany that I can't live with myself anymore. So yeah, but Eckhart never really nailed things for me, and eventually I found an Indian guru. Guru is a word that people don't really like, but that's what he was. That's what he was. He was a non-Advaita teacher. He was called, he's dead now, he's called Ramesh Balsekar. He was the president of the Bank of England, Bank of India. He started as a trainee. He got to the London School of Economics. He came from a high caste Hindu family. He went to work in the Bank of India and ended up as its president and retired at 60 when he set on his quest that I had been set on. It's not something I chose to do. It's something that the universe decided that I needed to do. And Ramesh was a non-Advaita teacher, very practical, very precise, and pretty amazing. And his teachings have pretty much changed my life. In fact, completely changed my life and how I view the world, how I operate in the world, or how the world operates me and everybody else, really. That's I'll talk about that another day. Yes, I will talk about him another day. So there you are. Name's Graham Travé. Some people call me Martin. Some call me Graham. Some call me Travé. So it's Graham Martin Travé. Yeah, Travé it's not a French name. It's a Catalan name. My grandfather was from Catalonia in Spain. And that's another story. No, I'm going to say it now. My dad had died. That was obviously my grandfather's youngest son. We lived in London, my mum, my brother and I. And I don't know, I used to go and see this old man called Grandad who lived in the top floor flat in a block of flats in Stockwell in London. And my brother used to take me round there. My brother's 2.5 years older than me, so he was always the boss. So we used to go around there to see this old man called Grandad. And I didn't know until after he had died, I think he died when I was 9 or 10, that he was actually our father's father. I had no idea. I didn't, he didn't talk to us very much. All I can remember is he used to peel grapes for me. And my brother, we used to eat these grapes, peel the skin off, which English people don't tend to do, but he did. And we used to make him cigarettes. He had like this cigarette making machine. And it was my brother's job to put the cigarette paper in and, a filter, and then put the prescribed amount of tobacco in, which was weighed out. My brother was, very advanced. He could do all these things. I couldn't. So we put it all in there. But it was my job to close the lid on, and then on this cigarette making machine, the cigarette would pop out. And then I would put all the cigarettes in like a cigarette box, and he had a silver cigarette case, which I still got here somewhere. Yeah, that was my job. And then, I don't know, time to go. We used to go to a friend of my mum's over the road. It's called her Auntie Steve. Yeah, she's living in the ground floor flat, the flat's opposite. And my mum would come in after work and take us home. And occasionally my granddad, this old man called Grandad, would come around for Sunday lunch, and he'd bring a bottle of red wine for him and a bottle of Mackerson for my mum. How funny is that? Anyway, my grandfather wasn't a mentor at all. I can't remember even talking to me, let alone never showed me any affection. Never. Anyway, thanks for watching this. I think you've got to say things like, oh, please subscribe if you like this, and when I make another video and post it, it will pop up. if you push the like button, it does something with the algorithms at YouTube that some other people will be sent, this may be of interest to you. And, make any comments. I'm not sure what you would say, really, but perhaps we can talk about things. Perhaps we can do some, I don't know, some sort of live videos or Zoom meetings where, if anybody's got any questions about when I really want to talk about the teachings of Ramesh Balsekar, because it's very impactful for people if it resonates with them. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, listening, and hope to see you again. Bye-bye.